The Galactic Medical Council had grown desperate. 3 standard cycles had passed since the plague began spreading across the outer rim worlds, and their best xenobiologists couldn't even identify the pathogen's origin. The disease moved like wildfire through peaceful civilizations, turning vibrant colonies into ghost towns within weeks. Ambassador Zethka of the Valorian Collective stood before the emergency session, her crystalline features reflecting the amber warning lights that bathed the council chamber. Representatives from 47 species filled the tiered seats, their various forms of distress evident despite the biological diversity. Some displayed chromatic shifts indicating fear, others emitted pheromone clouds of anxiety, and a few simply trembled. "The situation grows worse by the solar rotation," Zethka announced, her voice resonating through the chamber's translation matrices. "The Kepler colonies report complete communication blackout. The mining stations of Beta Centauri have gone silent. Even the research outposts in the Vega system stopped transmitting yesterday." Elder Physician Mordan, a being whose species had dedicated millennia to healing arts, floated forward on his anti-grav platform. His tentacles writhed with agitation as bioluminescent patterns pulsed across his translucent skin. "Our medical ships cannot approach the affected zones. The plague spreads to any vessel that attempts rescue operations. We've lost 12 hospital ships and their entire crews." The chamber erupted in concerned chatter, a cacophony of clicks, whistles, harmonics, and subsonic rumbles. Every species present had evolved on worlds where cooperation and peaceful coexistence were necessary for survival. Violence was largely unknown to them, and their medical techniques focused on harmony with natural biological processes. "What of the quarantine protocols?" asked Counselor Yith, her feathered crest rising in distress. Her avian species had never encountered a disease they couldn't cure through careful nurturing and biological enhancement. "Ineffective," Morton replied. "The pathogen appears to be artificially designed. It adapts to our containment measures faster than we can implement them. Our healing frequencies that normally restore cellular harmony seem to accelerate its spread instead." A heavy silence settled over the assembly. These were beings whose greatest achievement was the eradication of all known diseases through gentle, life-affirming treatments. They built hospitals that resembled gardens, used sound therapy and energy healing, and approached medicine as an art of nurturing life back to health. The concept of a disease that resisted their compassionate methods was beyond their understanding. "Perhaps," suggested Healer Prime Vexlan, his insectoid mandibles clicking nervously, "we should consider consulting species outside our traditional medical alliance. The archives mention several civilizations we've deemed too aggressive for our healing philosophies." Another uncomfortable silence. The Galactic Medical Council prided itself on working only with species that shared their values of gentle treatment and respect for all life. They had specifically avoided contact with worlds they considered too militaristic or violent. Ambassador Zethka's crystalline form flickered with conflicting light patterns. "You speak of the Deathworld species, those beings who evolved on planets so hostile that they developed unusual survival mechanisms. The humans," whispered Counselor Yeath, the word barely audible through her translator. The name sent ripples of unease through the chamber. Human space was known to the Council, but their methods were considered barbaric. They actually introduced foreign substances into their bodies to prevent disease. They used radiation and toxic chemicals as treatments. They cut into living tissue with sharp instruments. Such practices horrified species who healed through meditation, energy work, and biological harmony. Their homeworld Earth is a nightmare of extreme weather, predatory life forms, and toxic environments, Mordan stated. They evolved not just to survive, but to thrive in conditions that would kill most of us within minutes. Their medicine reflects this brutality, but they are effective, Elder Physician Mordan admitted reluctantly. "Our intelligence reports suggest they've eliminated diseases by essentially poisoning the pathogens, while somehow keeping the host alive. They've developed something they call an immune system that actually attacks invading organisms." The very concept made several council members visibly ill. Their species had evolved beyond such primitive biological warfare, developing instead sophisticated methods of cellular communication and harmonious healing. "Are we truly so desperate that we would invite warriors to perform medicine?" asked Healer Vexilon. Ambassador Zethka looked around the chamber, seeing fear and desperation in every representative. 3 more worlds had fallen silent during their session. The plague was accelerating, and their gentle methods had proven completely inadequate. The mortality reports from the affected systems indicate complete population loss, she announced grimly. Billions of lives have been extinguished. Our healing arts, refined over thousands of years, cannot even slow this plague's advance. A newer voice spoke up from the upper galleries. Junior healer Kael'than, barely past her training cycles, stood with visible nervousness. Perhaps we've been thinking about this incorrectly. Our methods assume the disease wants to coexist. But what if this pathogen is designed for destruction? What if gentleness and harmony are exactly what it's counting on? The suggestion was radical. For these species, the idea that healing might require aggression went against their fundamental understanding of medicine. You suggest we abandon our principles? Asked Elder Mordan. I suggest we adapt them, Kael'than replied. We've always believed that life seeks balance and harmony. But what if some threats require a different kind of balance? What if sometimes to save life we need to fight? Ambassador Zethka considered this. Her own species had faced extinction once before, surviving only by learning to adapt quickly to changing circumstances. Perhaps their medical philosophy also needed to evolve. Very well, she announced. I propose we send an emergency diplomatic mission to human space. Not to invite them into our medical practices, but to ask for their expertise in dealing with hostile pathogens. The vote was close, with many representatives abstaining, rather than explicitly supporting such a radical departure from their values. But as another distress signal cut out mid-transmission from a colony ship in the Tau Ceti system, the measure passed. May the cosmic harmony forgive us, whispered Morden as the session concluded. None of them could imagine what they had just set in motion. They expected perhaps some crude chemical weapons or harsh treatments that would horrify their sensibilities, but might somehow prove effective. They had no concept of what humans called war, or how a species that had spent millennia fighting everything from viruses to each other might approach a biological threat designed to defeat peaceful civilizations. The humans were coming, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. The human response came faster than anyone expected, and in a form that nobody could have predicted. Ambassador Zethka stood in the docking bay of Medical Station Prime, watching the approaching human vessel through the transparent aluminum viewing port. She had expected something clinical and sterile, perhaps resembling their own hospital ships with their flowing, organic curves and soft bioluminescent lighting. Instead, what emerged from the quantum tunnel looked like it had been built for war. The UES Hippocrates was a massive vessel, bristling with what appeared to be weapon emplacements, sensor arrays, and angular armor plating. Its hull bore scorch marks and impact craters that hadn't been repaired, giving it a battle-worn appearance that made Zethka's crystalline structure flicker nervously. That's their medical ship? Whispered Counselor Yith, her feathers ruffling in distress. According to the transmission codes, confirmed Communications Officer Dalvin. They identified it as a rapid response medical frigate. The docking procedure itself was a revelation of human engineering philosophy. Instead of the gentle magnetic alignment systems used throughout the galaxy, the human ship extended mechanical clamps that physically seized the station's docking ports with audible clangs that reverberated through the hull. Emergency lights flickered as the station's systems struggled to accommodate the power fluctuations from the human vessel. Their ship is actively jamming our sensors, reported Security Chief Nextar, with growing alarm, and it's broadcasting on military frequencies. When the airlock finally opened, what emerged wasn't the soft-spoken healers they had hoped for. The first figure through the portal was clearly human, but unlike anything in their xenobiology files. She stood nearly 2 meters tall, with muscles clearly visible beneath her form-fitting suit. Her hair was cut short and practical, her eyes held an alertness that suggested constant readiness for danger. And most disturbing of all, she carried weapons. Commander Sarah Chen, United Earth Medical Corps, she announced, her voice carrying an authority that made several council members step back. We received your distress call regarding a hostile pathogen. Where's the patient? Ambassador Zethka found herself momentarily speechless. The human had used the singular form. Patient, not patients, as if she expected to treat an entire plague outbreak as a single medical case. Commander Chen, Zethka managed, we are grateful for your response, but perhaps there has been some misunderstanding. We face a pandemic affecting multiple star systems. Billions of lives are at stake. I know, Chen replied simply. Where's the patient? Behind her, more humans emerged from the airlock. They moved with a fluid efficiency that suggested extensive training, carrying what appeared to be medical equipment but built like military hardware. Their diagnostic scanners looked like weapon sights. Their biocontainers resembled ammunition cases, and their protective gear was clearly designed for combat conditions. The affected systems are under quarantine, Elder Physician Mordan explained, his tentacles writhing nervously. Our hospital ships cannot safely approach. The plague spreads to any vessel that attempts rescue operations. Right, Chen nodded. Hostile environment. That's why they sent us. She gestured to her team. We specialize in medical operations under combat conditions. Doc Stevens here performed surgery during the Proxima Rebellion while under artillery fire. Lieutenant Zhang extracted wounded from a toxic atmosphere leak on Europa Station. Sergeant Rodriguez has experience treating biological weapon exposure. The medical council exchanged glances of confusion and horror. These humans spoke of medicine and war as if they were naturally connected concepts. Perhaps you misunderstand our situation, Healer Vexlin interjected. This is not a military conflict. We face a biological crisis requiring delicate healing techniques and respect for all life. Chen's expression shifted slightly, showing what might have been sympathy. Doctor, with respect, you called us because your delicate techniques failed. This pathogen is designed to exploit your approach. You're trying to negotiate with something that wants to kill everything it touches. She activated a portable holographic display that materialized between them, showing a three-dimensional model of something that made several council members recoil in horror. The image revealed a microscopic structure that was clearly artificial, bristling with what appeared to be aggressive appendages and showing clear signs of military-grade engineering. We analyzed the transmission data you sent, Chen continued. This isn't a natural disease. It's a biological weapon. Someone built this thing specifically to target species that heal through harmony and cooperation. See these receptor sites? They're designed to hijack your healing frequencies and turn them into accelerated replication triggers. Dr. Stevens, a lean human with cybernetic implants replacing his left eye and arm, stepped forward. The pathogen actually feeds on the energy signatures your medical equipment produces. Every time you tried to heal someone, you were essentially feeding the infection. The implications hit the council like a physical blow. Their most fundamental medical principles, their entire philosophy of healing through harmony and energy, had been weaponized against them. Whoever created this plague understood their methods intimately, and had specifically designed it to turn their greatest strengths into fatal weaknesses. Who would do such a thing? Whispered Counselor Yith. Someone who studies their enemies before attacking, Chen replied grimly. Someone with patience, intelligence, and no regard for civilian casualties. In human terms, we'd call this a war crime. But we have no enemies, Ambassador Zethka protested. Our species have known peace for millennia. We've eliminated warfare, aggression, violence from our societies. Lieutenant Zhang, a compact human with scars on her hands, looked up from her scanner readings. With respect, Ambassador, someone has an enemy. And they're using a biological weapon specifically engineered to exploit peaceful civilizations. The humans moved with practiced efficiency, setting up equipment that was simultaneously alien and intimidating. Their medical scanners hummed with power levels that would have been considered dangerous by galactic standards. And their biocontainment units looked like military fortifications rather than healing equipment. What we're going to do, Chen explained as her team worked, is treat this like what it is. An act of war disguised as a plague. We're going to track down the source, analyze the weapon, and destroy it before it spreads further. Destroy it? Elder Morden's bioluminescent patterns flickered in distress. But surely we can find a way to cure those already infected. Our principles require us to preserve all life. Chen turned to face him directly, her expression serious but not unkind. Doctor, this weapon has already killed billions. The infected colonies aren't sick. They're dead. All of them. What's spreading to your medical ships isn't trying to find a host to coexist with. It's trying to find new populations to exterminate. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of civilizations that had never faced deliberate evil. They had built their societies on the assumption that all life sought harmony and balance. The concept of something designed purely for destruction was as alien to them as their healing philosophy was to humans. So what do we do? Zethka asked finally. Chen's smile was sharp-edged and utterly human. We do what humans do best. We fight back. The journey to the first infected system aboard the human medical frigate was unlike anything the Galactic observers had experienced. Commander Chen had insisted that Ambassador Zethka and Elder Physician Mordan accompany them to witness human medical protocols firsthand, though what they witnessed challenged every assumption they held about healing. Combat. Medical bay sealed and pressurized, announced Dr. Stevens, as the ship dropped out of quantum tunnel near the Kepler colonies. Biohazard containment at maximum, combat stimulants loaded, resurrection protocols standing by. Mordan's tentacles writhed in confusion. Resurrection protocols? Commander Chen, surely your species has not developed the ability to restore life to the deceased. Chen looked up from her tactical display with what might have been amusement. Not exactly resurrection, Doc. But we've gotten very good at bringing people back from almost dead. Humans are surprisingly hard to kill permanently if you catch them in time. The first visual scans of the Kepler colonies revealed the scope of the devastation. Cities that had once housed millions now showed no life signs whatsoever. The plague had moved through the population with systematic efficiency, leaving behind infrastructure but no survivors. Standard galactic quarantine protocols would have us maintain a safe distance and attempt long-range healing transmissions, Ambassador Zethka observed nervously. Which is exactly what this weapon expects, replied Lieutenant Zhang, monitoring her bioscanner arrays. We're going in close. Personal protective equipment locked, aggressive countermeasures online. What the humans called personal protective equipment was effectively a suit of armor. Each team member wore full environmental suits that incorporated computer systems, life support, medical monitoring, and what appeared to be defensive weaponry. They looked like they were preparing for an assault rather than a medical intervention. The pathogen signature is strongest at the Colonial Medical Center, reported Sergeant Rodriguez. Makes sense. It would have spread fastest through their healing facilities. Dr. Stevens began preparations for what he called an aggressive biopsy mission. The humans would actually land on the infected world and collect samples directly from the source. The very idea horrified the Galactic medical team. Such direct contact violates every containment protocol, Mordan protested. You could spread the infection to your own ship, your own species. Not if we kill it first, Chen replied, checking her equipment. Human immune systems are designed for warfare at the cellular level. Our bodies assume everything foreign is hostile until proven otherwise. We attack first and identify later. She activated a holographic display showing human cellular activity that made the Galactic observers recoil in shock. Instead of the harmonious cooperation they expected from biological systems, human cells were engaged in constant warfare. Specialized attack cells patrolled the bloodstream, seeking and destroying anything they identified as foreign. Chemical weapons flooded infection sites. Cellular security forces maintained constant vigilance against invasion. Your own bodies attacked the healing process? Zethka asked in horror. Our bodies are the healing process, Dr. Stevens corrected. Every human carries a standing army designed to fight biological threats. We've been at war with viruses, bacteria, parasites, and toxins for millions of years of evolution. Our medicine doesn't try to achieve harmony with disease. It tries to kill disease before it kills us. The landing party's descent to the colony surface was conducted like a military operation. Their shuttle's approach pattern included evasive maneuvers. Their landing site was chosen for tactical advantage, and they deployed in formation with overlapping fields of protection. Contact in 3, 2, 1, announced Chen as they breached the medical center. Environmental hazards detected. Pathogen concentration extreme. Proceeding with hostile sampling. What they found inside the facility defied the galactic understanding of disease progression. The pathogen hadn't just killed the inhabitants. It had systematically converted the entire medical facility into a production center for itself. Healing equipment had been corrupted into breeding chambers. Diagnostic systems now served as distribution networks. The very architecture designed for nurturing life had been twisted into an engine of death. Fascinating, Dr. Stevens commented, his voice distorted by his suit's communication system. The weapon doesn't just exploit peaceful medical practices, it requires them. Look at these conversion patterns. It can only replicate using the energy signatures of harmony-based healing systems. Through their helmet cameras, The galactic observers watched the humans work with methodical efficiency. Instead of trying to understand or communicate with the pathogen, they simply gathered samples while their equipment maintained what they called aggressive sterilization protocols. Anything the humans touched was immediately subjected to radiation, chemical bombardment, and electromagnetic pulses that would have been considered violent by galactic standards. "The pathogen is attempting to infiltrate our equipment," Lieutenant Zhang reported calmly. "Defensive systems engaging. Sterilization complete." Elder Morden watched in amazement as human medical scanners actually fought back against the biological weapon, treating the diagnostic process as a form of combat. Their equipment didn't just observe the pathogen, it actively defended itself while gathering data. "Sample collection complete," announced Sergeant Rodriguez. "Pathogen neutralized, biohazard contained, extraction protocols ready." The entire operation took less than an hour. The humans had accomplished more than months of galactic medical research by simply refusing to treat the pathogen as something to be understood or cooperated with. They had approached it as an enemy to be defeated. Back aboard the Hippocrates, Dr. Stevens began what he called aggressive analysis protocols. Instead of the gentle observation techniques used throughout the galaxy, human medical equipment subjected the pathogen samples to every form of stress, attack, and destruction they could devise. "The weapon shows clear artificial engineering," Stevens reported to the assembled group. "Genetic markers suggest origin from beyond known space. Whoever built this studied galactic medical practices extensively and designed specifically to counter them." "But the most interesting discovery," he continued, bringing up a new display, "is that the pathogen is completely defenseless against aggressive immune responses. It has no adaptation to warfare-based biology because it was designed to exploit peaceful species." Commander Chen's expression grew grimmer. "Which means this is just the first wave. Whoever sent this weapon is testing galactic defenses. They're learning how peaceful civilizations respond to biological threats." Ambassador Zethka felt her crystalline structure flicker with new understanding. "You believe this is preparation for invasion?" "I believe this is invasion," Chen corrected. "Biological warfare followed by conventional assault. Standard human military doctrine would be to first weaken the enemy's ability to resist, then move in with direct force." The implications were staggering. The galactic civilizations had spent millennia eliminating warfare from their cultures, developing instead sophisticated, peaceful societies focused on cooperation and harmony. They had no concept of defending against deliberate aggression because they had never faced an enemy that existed solely to destroy. "What do we do?" Morden asked quietly. Chen's smile carried no warmth. "We do what my species learned to do over millions of years of evolution. We adapt. We fight back, and we make the cost of attacking us too high for anyone to consider it worth the risk." Dr. Stevens looked up from his analysis station. "Commander, I've got a preliminary antidote." "It's not gentle, it's not harmonious, and it violates every galactic medical principle. But it should work." "Define not gentle," Ambassador Zethka asked nervously. "We flood the infected systems with engineered retroviruses designed to hunt down and destroy the weapon pathogen," Stevens explained. "Essentially, we fight biological warfare with biological warfare. Fight fire with fire." The galactic representative stared in shock. The humans weren't just proposing to cure the plague. They were proposing to unleash their own biological weapon against it. "And if your retrovirus mutates or spreads beyond its intended target?" Morden asked. Dr. Stevens shrugged. "Then we release another one designed to hunt down the first one." Human medicine is all about controlled warfare at the cellular level. We've been doing this for centuries. Chen turned to address the galactic delegation directly. "Here's what's going to happen. We're going to cure this plague using methods that will horrify you. Then we're going to track down whoever sent it and make sure they never threaten peaceful civilizations again. The question is whether you want to learn our methods or just hope we succeed without understanding how." The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of civilizations facing their first encounter with warfare. They had called for healers and instead found warriors who healed through controlled destruction. "Teach us," Ambassador Zethka said finally. "Teach us how to fight." The transformation of Medical Station Prime into humanity's first interspecies combat medical training facility happened with shocking speed. Within 48 hours of Ambassador Zethka's request, The humans had converted 3 entire sections of the station into what they called hostile environment medical training laboratories. Elder physician Morden floated through the corridors in a state of constant amazement and horror. Where once gentle bioluminescent panels had provided soothing healing light, now harsh white illumination blazed from fixtures designed for what humans called combat visibility. The soft harmonic frequencies that had promoted cellular regeneration were replaced by communication systems that could function during what Dr. Stevens cheerfully referred to as active biological warfare conditions. First lesson, announced Commander Chen to the assembled group of galactic medical personnel, is understanding the difference between treatment and cure. Your medical philosophy aims to treat symptoms while maintaining harmony with the disease organism. Our philosophy aims to cure by eliminating the disease organism completely. She gestured to a containment unit holding samples of the weapon pathogen. This biological weapon exists solely to kill. It has no other purpose, no desire for coexistence, no interest in harmony. Trying to achieve balance with something designed for destruction is like trying to negotiate with a forest fire. Dr. Stevens stepped forward, his cybernetic implants gleaming under the harsh lighting. Human medical training begins with a simple principle. Identify the threat, contain the threat, neutralize the threat. We assume everything unknown is potentially hostile until proven otherwise. The galactic medical team struggled with concepts that contradicted their fundamental understanding of healing. Healer Vexlon, whose insectoid species had developed medicine based on colony cooperation, clicked his mandibles in distress. But how do you distinguish between beneficial organisms and harmful ones? Our bodies host trillions of symbiotic life forms. Surely attacking everything foreign would destroy these essential relationships. That's why we developed targeted immune responses, Lieutenant Zhang explained, activating a holographic display of human immune system function. Our bodies maintain databases of known threats and launch specific attacks rather than general warfare. It's like having a police force instead of just random violence. What followed was an education that challenged everything the galactic civilizations thought they knew about biology and medicine. The humans taught aggressive diagnostic techniques that could identify threats in seconds rather than the hours required by traditional harmonic analysis. They demonstrated targeted treatment protocols that could eliminate specific pathogens while leaving beneficial organisms untouched. Most shocking of all, they introduced the concept of medical surveillance. Every human carries what we call an immune system, Dr. Stevens explained to his increasingly horrified audience. It's essentially a permanent military force that patrols our bodies, gathering intelligence on potential threats and maintaining readiness to respond to attacks. Counselor Yith's feathers ruffled with distress. Your bodies are in constant warfare. Our bodies are in constant readiness for warfare, Chen corrected. Most of the time, the immune system just patrols and maintains equipment. But when a real threat appears, it can mobilize instantly. The practical demonstrations that followed left several galactic observers requiring medical attention of their own. The humans had brought samples of various pathogens from Earth, contained in what they called training scenarios, and proceeded to demonstrate rapid response protocols. Biological threat detected, announced Dr. Stevens as he released a controlled sample of Earth influenza virus into a sealed chamber. Pathogen identification complete, threat assessment moderate. Initiating targeted response. What happened next looked like warfare conducted at a microscopic level. Human immune cells surrounded the viruses, identified their specific characteristics, and launched coordinated attacks using chemical weapons, physical destruction, and what could only be described as cellular assassination. The entire engagement was over in minutes, with the pathogen completely eliminated. Your immune systems actually remember previous encounters, observed Ambassador Zethka with fascination. Memory is crucial for effective defense, Chen agreed. Every threat we've ever faced gets cataloged and analyzed. Next time we encounter something similar, the response is faster and more efficient. Elder Mordan's bioluminescent patterns flickered with conflicting emotions. This explains why your species survived on such a hostile world. You didn't achieve harmony with your environment, you conquered it. We adapted to it, Lieutenant Zhang corrected. Earth taught us that sometimes survival requires fighting back. Not everything in the universe wants to coexist peacefully. The training expanded beyond just immune system, functioned to include what humans called Emergency medical protocols. The Galactic teams learned to use equipment designed for hostile environments, practiced rapid diagnosis under combat conditions, and most disturbing of all, began to understand strategic medical thinking. Medical resources are always limited during crisis situations, explained Sergeant Rodriguez during a simulation exercise. You have to make decisions about who to treat first based on their chances of survival and their importance to the overall mission. It's called medical triage. The concept of deliberately choosing not to treat certain patients horrified the Galactic medical teams. Their philosophy had always been to provide equal care to all beings regardless of circumstances. But what about our duty to preserve all life? Asked Healer Vexilon. Sometimes preserving some lives requires accepting that you can't save others, Rodriguez replied grimly. It's the hardest lesson in combat medicine, but it's necessary when resources are limited and time is critical. As the training progressed, the Galactic medical teams began to understand why humans had been so effective against the biological weapon. Their entire approach to medicine was based on the assumption that healing sometimes required controlled destruction. They didn't try to achieve harmony with disease. They tried to eliminate disease as quickly and efficiently as possible. The retrovirus were preparing for deployment, Dr. Stevens explained during an advanced lesson, is essentially a targeted assassin. It will seek out the weapon pathogen's genetic signature and destroy it at the cellular level. We've programmed it with specific kill commands and built-in termination sequences to prevent uncontrolled replication. Ambassador Zethka watched the preparation process with growing understanding. The humans weren't just creating a cure, they were creating a biological weapon designed to hunt down and destroy another biological weapon. It was warfare conducted at the molecular level. How do you ensure your weapon doesn't turn on friendly organisms? She asked. Multiple safeguards, Chen replied. Genetic locks that prevent replication in non-target organisms, chemical triggers that cause self-destruction after a certain time period, and designed incompatibility with beneficial bacterial signatures. It's like creating a smart bomb that only explodes when it finds the specific target. The final phase of training involved what the humans called field deployment scenarios. The Galactic medical teams learned to operate in contaminated environments, use protective equipment designed for biological warfare, and most importantly, how to think strategically about medical intervention. Medicine isn't just about treating individual patients, Chen explained during the final briefing. Sometimes it's about protecting entire populations by preventing the spread of threats. Sometimes it's about choosing between competing priorities, and sometimes it's about fighting back against enemies who use biology as a weapon. Elder Morden's tentacles had stopped writhing with distress, and now moved with purposeful determination. I begin to understand. You're not teaching us to abandon our principles of preserving life. You're teaching us to preserve more lives by being willing to destroy threats to life. Exactly, Chen confirmed. The goal is still healing, but sometimes healing requires warfare. As the training concluded, the assembled Galactic medical teams looked different. They still carried their commitment to preserving life, but now they understood that sometimes preservation required active defense. They had learned to think like warriors while maintaining their dedication to healing. The retrovirus is ready for deployment, Dr. Stevens announced. Who's ready to save some worlds? The response was immediate and unanimous. The healers had learned to fight, and now they were ready to bring salvation through fire. The first deployment of humanity's retrovirus weapon against the biological plague began at dawn, ship time, aboard the newly commissioned UES Asclepius. The massive vessel was humanity's most advanced medical battleship, designed specifically for biological warfare scenarios, and crewed by both human combat medics and their galactic allies who had completed the hostile environment medical training. Ambassador Zethka stood in the command center, her crystalline form reflecting the red alert lighting that bathed the bridge. Around her, a mixture of human and galactic personnel worked with the efficient coordination that had emerged from their intensive training together. The sight would have been impossible to imagine just weeks earlier. Approaching the Vega research outposts, announced Lieutenant Zhang from her tactical station. Biohazard readings are off the scale. The pathogen has converted the entire facility into a breeding complex. Through the view screen, the Vega research station was visible as a twisted monument to biological warfare. What had once been a pristine scientific facility now pulsed with unnatural growth. The weapon pathogen had corrupted the station's biolabs, turning instruments of discovery into factories of death. Organic matter covered the hull in writhing patterns that made several crew members turn away in disgust. Deployment range achieved, reported Dr. Stevens from the medical combat station. All retrovirus warheads are armed and targeted, awaiting authorization for biological counterattack. Commander Chen studied the tactical displays with the cold efficiency that had made her legendary among human combat medics. Elder Mordan, as Senior Galactic Medical Authority, the authorization is yours. Are you prepared to wage biological warfare? Elder Mordan's tentacles had grown still, his bioluminescent patterns showing the deep blues and purples of absolute resolve. The transformation in the gentle healer was remarkable. The preservation of life requires the destruction of that which would destroy life. Authorization granted. Deploy the weapon. What followed was unlike anything in galactic military history, because galactic civilizations had never developed military history. The retrovirus deployment resembled both a medical procedure and an artillery bombardment. Specialized delivery warheads containing trillions of engineered viruses were launched toward the infected station with pinpoint precision. Impact in 30 seconds, announced Sergeant Rodriguez. Biowarfare containment fields activated. All personnel to combat medical stations. The humans had learned from millennia of warfare that even friendly biological weapons could be unpredictable. The bridge crew wore full protective gear, and the ship's medical systems were prepared for every possible contamination scenario. Contact, reported Lieutenant Zhang. Retrovirus deployment successful, beginning real-time analysis of biowarfare engagement. The main screen shifted to microscopic view, showing the battle between human-engineered retroviruses and the alien biological weapon at the cellular level. It was warfare in its most fundamental form, with the human viruses seeking out and systematically destroying the pathogen that had devastated peaceful civilizations. The retrovirus is working, Dr. Stevens announced with obvious satisfaction. Pathogen destruction rate at 97% and climbing. Enemy biological weapon is attempting adaptation, but our programming is staying ahead of its mutation cycles. Elder Mordan watched the molecular warfare with fascination and horror. Your viruses are actually hunting the pathogen. They're tracking it, cornering it, eliminating it with what appears to be tactical intelligence. We learn to program viruses the same way we learn to program computers, Chen explained, with specific objectives, decision trees, and adaptive responses. These retroviruses are essentially biological smart weapons. The battle for the Vega station lasted 3 hours. The human biological weapons systematically eliminated every trace of the hostile pathogen, then activated their programmed self-destruction sequences to prevent uncontrolled replication. What remained was a sterile facility that could be safely reclaimed. Vega station secured, announced Dr. Stevens. No traces of hostile pathogen detected. Retrovirus self-termination confirmed. Area safe for conventional medical teams. But the real test came when they attempted to restore life to the station. The galactic medical teams had learned human techniques, but they retained their fundamental commitment to healing and regeneration. Now they would discover if their merged philosophies could actually restore what had been destroyed. Healer Vexilon led the restoration team, his insectoid form now encased in human-designed protective gear that looked like a combination of medical equipment and combat armor. Behind him, mixed teams of human combat medics and galactic healers prepared to attempt something unprecedented. Aggressive restoration in a former biological warfare zone. Environment confirmed hostile neutral, reported Vexilon as his team entered the station. No active threats detected, but extensive biological damage to infrastructure and life support systems. What they found inside the station was devastation on a scale that challenged both human and galactic understanding. The pathogen hadn't just killed the research team, it had systematically corrupted every biological system in the facility. Life support systems had been turned into breeding chambers. Food synthesizers had become toxin factories, and even the station's bioneural computer systems had been infected and destroyed. This isn't just death, observed Dr. Stevens, scanning the ruined laboratories. This is deliberate destruction of the concept of life itself. Whoever built this pathogen wanted to eliminate not just living beings, but the possibility of life. The restoration process required techniques that combined human aggressive intervention with galactic healing arts in ways that neither species had imagined possible. Human equipment cleared contaminated areas with controlled radiation and chemical sterilization, while galactic healers used their harmonic techniques to encourage new biological growth in the clean spaces. "It's working," announced Counselor Yith, her feathered form vibrating with excitement. "The combination of human purification and our regeneration techniques is actually restoring the station's biological systems." But their success was interrupted by a discovery that changed everything they thought. They knew about the threat they faced. "Commander Chen," called Lieutenant Zhang urgently, "you need to see this. The station's data cores weren't completely destroyed. I've recovered some files and they contain information about the pathogen's origin." The data that appeared on the main screen was devastating in its implications. The Vega research team had been studying quantum communication signals from beyond the galactic rim when they were attacked. Their final transmissions revealed that the biological weapon hadn't been deployed randomly. It had been sent in response to their discovery. They found evidence of a massive fleet approaching from extragalactic space. Chen read from the recovered data. Ships designed specifically for biological warfare. The pathogen wasn't just an attack, it was reconnaissance. Someone was testing our defenses before invasion. Ambassador Zethka's crystalline structure flickered with patterns of fear and determination. "How long before this fleet arrives?" Dr. Stevens consulted his tactical analysis. "Based on the quantum signatures in this data, approximately 6 months. And, Commander, the approaching fleet is massive. Hundreds of ships, all apparently designed for biological warfare on a galactic scale." The implications were staggering. The pathogen attack had been just the beginning. Whoever was approaching had studied galactic civilizations, identified their peaceful nature as a weakness, and designed their invasion strategy specifically to exploit that weakness. They had expected to find worlds full of corpses when they arrived. Instead, they're going to find worlds full of beings who have learned to fight back, Chen announced grimly. 6 months to prepare for biological warfare on a galactic scale. Elder Mordan's tentacles writhed with what had become familiar determination. "Then we must expand the training program. Every world, every species, every medical facility must learn human combat medicine techniques." "It won't be enough," Sergeant Rodriguez warned. 6 months isn't long enough to transform peaceful civilizations into effective biological warfare combatants. We need a different strategy. Commander Chen studied the tactical data with the same cold analysis that had made her species masters of warfare. "We don't need to transform every civilization. We just need to teach enough of them to create an effective resistance network. When the invasion fleet arrives, they'll expect to face the same peaceful healers they tested with the pathogen." Her smile was sharp and utterly human. "Instead, they're going to face something new. Galactic civilizations that have learned human warfare techniques while maintaining their commitment to preserving life. We're going to show them what happens when healers decide to fight back." Dr. Stevens looked up from his analysis station. "Commander, I've been thinking about that retrovirus we deployed. We could modify it, make it more aggressive, turn it into an active defense weapon rather than just a cure." "Explain," Chen ordered. "We create a biological weapon designed not just to destroy hostile pathogens, but to actively seek out and eliminate any biological warfare agent, a permanent immune system for entire star systems. When the invasion fleet approaching from extragalactic space," Chen read from the recovered data. "Ships designed specifically for biological warfare. The pathogen wasn't just an attack, it was reconnaissance. Someone was testing our defenses before invasion." Ambassador Zethka's crystalline structure flickered with patterns of fear and determination. "How long before this fleet arrives?" Dr. Stevens consulted his tactical analysis. "Based on the quantum signatures in this data, approximately 6 months. And Commander, the approaching fleet is massive. Hundreds of ships, all apparently designed for biological warfare on a galactic scale." The implications were staggering. The pathogen attack had been just the beginning. Whoever was approaching had studied galactic civilizations, identified their peaceful nature as a weakness, and designed their invasion strategy specifically to exploit that weakness. They had expected to find worlds full of corpses when they arrived. Instead, they're going to find worlds full of beings who have learned to fight back, Chen announced grimly. 6 months to prepare for biological warfare on a galactic scale. Elder Mordan's tentacles writhed with what had become familiar determination. Then we must expand the training program. Every world, every species, every medical facility must learn human combat medicine techniques. It won't be enough, Sergeant Rodriguez warned. 6 months isn't long enough to transform peaceful civilizations into effective biological warfare combatants. We need a different strategy. Commander Chen studied the tactical data with the same cold analysis that had made her species masters of warfare. We don't need to transform every civilization. We just need to teach enough of them to create an effective resistance network. When the invasion fleet arrives, they'll expect to face the same peaceful healers they tested with the pathogen. Her smile was sharp and utterly human. Instead, they're going to face something new. Galactic civilizations that have learned human warfare techniques while maintaining their commitment to preserving life. We're going to show them what happens when healers decide to fight back. Dr. Stevens looked up from his analysis station. Commander, I've been thinking about that retrovirus we deployed. We could modify it, make it more aggressive, turn it into an active defense weapon rather than just a cure. Explain, Chen ordered. We create a biological weapon designed not just to destroy hostile pathogens, but to actively seek out and eliminate any biological warfare agent. A permanent immune system for entire star systems. When the invasion fleet arrives, they'll find that every world they try to attack can fight back at the molecular level. The concept was revolutionary. Instead of defending against biological warfare, they would create biological counter-warfare. Entire star systems that could actively resist biological attack. Ambassador Zethka considered the implications. We would be transforming our worlds into biological warfare zones. It goes against everything we've believed about healing and harmony. Sometimes, Chen replied, harmony requires the ability to fight for it. Sometimes healing requires the willingness to destroy that which would prevent healing. The decision that followed would reshape galactic civilization forever. The peaceful species that had called for healers were about to become the galaxy's first biological warfare civilization, armed with human techniques and galactic dedication to preserving life. Do it, Ambassador Zethka commanded. Prepare the counterweapon. When the invasion fleet arrives, they'll discover that they've created their own worst enemy. 6 months later, when the extragalactic invasion fleet emerged from quantum tunnel at the edge of the galaxy, they found something that defied every assumption their reconnaissance had provided. Fleet Commander Vorthak of the Devourers studied the sensor readings with growing confusion. His species had perfected biological warfare over thousands of years, conquering dozens of galaxies by deploying pathogens that exploited the peaceful nature of advanced civilizations. Their reconnaissance had indicated that this galaxy would be the easiest conquest yet, filled with species so committed to harmony that they would rather die than fight back. Fleet status report, Vorthak commanded from his bioship's nerve center, his carapaced form connecting directly to the vessel's living computer systems. All bioweapon deployment systems operational, reported his tactical coordinator. Pathogen reserves at maximum capacity. Initial reconnaissance confirmed complete effectiveness of primary biological weapon against target civilizations. Then why? Vorthak asked with growing irritation. Are we detecting active life signs from systems that should have been cleansed months ago? The main display showed a galaxy that was not only alive but actively broadcasting. Communication signals flowed between star systems with unprecedented volume and coordination. Instead of the scattered survivors they had expected to find, the galaxy appeared to be more unified and active than ever before. Launching secondary reconnaissance probe, announced the weapons coordinator. Deploying enhanced pathogen designed to eliminate any survivors from the primary attack. What happened next was unprecedented in the Devourer's long history of conquest. The reconnaissance probe never reached its target. Instead, as it approached the outer worlds of the galaxy, it was intercepted by something that the Devourer's sensors couldn't identify. Probe is under attack, reported the tactical coordinator with disbelief. Hostile organisms are physically assaulting our bioweapon. On the display, microscopic warfare played out as human-engineered retroviruses sought out and systematically destroyed the Devourer probe. But these weren't the defensive biological weapons they had encountered in other galaxies. These viruses moved with tactical intelligence, coordinating their attacks and adapting to countermeasures in real time. "Impossible," whispered Vorthak. "Biological weapons cannot exhibit strategic thinking." The answer came in the form of a transmission from the inner galaxy. The signal was broadcast simultaneously from thousands of worlds, and it carried a message that no Devourer fleet had ever received. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Galactic Defense Force," came the voice that had become legendary throughout the galaxy. "You are approaching sovereign space protected by active biological defense systems. Turn back now or face the consequences." Fleet Commander Vorthak's specialized warfare organs twitched with confusion. In their long history of conquest, no galaxy had ever issued warnings or demands. Peaceful civilizations didn't threaten their attackers. They either surrendered or died. "Respond to their transmission," he ordered. "Inform them that resistance is futile and surrender will result in quick death rather than prolonged suffering." The response that came back was unlike anything in Devourer experience. Instead of fearful pleading or desperate negotiations, they received tactical analysis. "We've studied your biological warfare techniques," Admiral Chen's voice continued. "We know how your pathogens work, how they exploit peaceful immune systems, and how they're designed to turn healing against itself. We've prepared accordingly." The main display shifted to show defensive installations throughout the galaxy. What had once been medical stations and healing centers had been transformed into biological warfare command centers. Ships that had been designed for rescue and relief operations now bristled with weapon systems designed to deploy biological countermeasures. "6 months ago," Chen continued, "you made the mistake of attacking civilizations that believed all life was sacred. You taught us that sometimes, preserving life requires the willingness to destroy threats to life. You're about to discover what happens when healers learn to fight." Commander Vorthak ordered immediate deployment of their primary biological weapons. Hundreds of bioships launched coordinated attacks, releasing pathogen clouds that had destroyed entire galactic civilizations. The Devourers expected to watch peaceful worlds die in helpless agony, as their own healing systems were turned against them. Instead, they witnessed the galaxy's first demonstration of coordinated biological warfare. As the pathogen clouds approached inhabited systems, they were met by defensive biological weapons that emerged from the worlds themselves. The planets had been transformed into active participants in their own defense, deploying atmospheric bioweapons that sought out and destroyed incoming threats before they could make planetfall. "Our primary pathogens are being neutralized," reported the tactical coordinator in disbelief. "The defensive organisms appear to be specifically designed to counter our biological weapons." Elder Physician Mordan, now bearing the title of Biological Warfare Coordinator, monitored the defense from Medical Station Prime. His tentacles moved with practiced efficiency across control systems that would have horrified his former self. "Human retrovirus deployment successful across all targeted systems. Devourer biological weapons showing 98% neutralization rate." Ambassador Zethka stood beside him, her crystalline form now enhanced with bioarmor that incorporated both human protective technology and galactic life support systems. "Status of the counterattack?" "Launching now," reported Dr. Stevens from his position as Director of Offensive Biological Warfare. "All systems are deploying hunter viruses, designed to track Devourer ships back to their source and eliminate their biological weapon production capabilities." What the Devourers had thought would be a simple conquest became the most devastating defeat in their species' history. The hunter viruses penetrated their bioships' defensive systems and began systematically destroying their ability to create biological weapons. For a species that had evolved to conquer through biological warfare, losing their pathogen production capability was equivalent to losing their entire military force. "Fleet retreat protocols," commanded Vorthak as his own ship's biological systems began failing. "Emergency quantum tunnel activation." All ships withdraw immediately. But the withdrawal was not the organized retreat of a defeated military force. It was the panicked flight of predators who had suddenly become prey. The hunter viruses continued to pursue fleeing ships, ensuring that none of the Devourer biological warfare capability could survive to threaten other galaxies. As the remnants of the invasion fleet disappeared into Quantum Tunnel, Admiral Chen addressed the galaxy from her command ship, now designated as the UES Hippocrates Prime. This is Admiral Chen to all galactic defense forces. The threat has been eliminated. The invasion fleet has been defeated through coordinated biological warfare. All systems report successful defense. The celebration that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had experienced. For the first time in their history, peaceful civilizations had successfully defended themselves against deliberate aggression. They had learned to fight without abandoning their commitment to preserving life. But perhaps the most remarkable transformation was in the beings themselves. Elder Physician Morden still dedicated his life to healing, but now he understood that sometimes healing required the willingness to destroy threats to life. Ambassador Zethka still worked for peaceful cooperation between species, but now she knew that peace sometimes had to be defended with force. Commander Chen stood on the observation deck of her ship, looking out at a galaxy that had been forever changed. The peaceful civilizations had learned to fight, but they had done so without losing their essential commitment to preserving life. They had become something new, warrior healers who could defend peace through strength. Status. Report from all systems, she requested. All biological threats neutralized, reported Dr. Stevens. Defensive. Systems remain active but stand down to peacetime alert levels. The galaxy is secure. Chen nodded with satisfaction. The Devourers had expected to find healers and had instead found something unprecedented. Civilizations that could heal and fight with equal skill. They had come seeking easy conquest and had instead created their own defeat. Admiral, called Lieutenant Zhang from the communications station. We're receiving signals from beyond the galactic rim. Other galaxies are requesting assistance. It appears the Devourers have been conquering peaceful civilizations throughout this region of space. Chen's smile was sharp with purpose. Prepare the fleet for extragalactic deployment. It's time to teach the universe that healers who learn to fight become the most dangerous enemies of those who prey on the peaceful. The galaxy that had called for healers had instead found salvation through fire. They had learned that sometimes the greatest act of healing was the willingness to destroy that which threatened life itself. The universe was about to discover what happened when beings dedicated to preserving life decided to fight back against those who would destroy it. The age of peaceful civilizations. Being easy targets for biological warfare was over. The galaxy now stood ready to defend not only itself but any